Hey, welcome back to Next Act Ninjas, the go-to podcast for mastering your health and wealth longevity. I'm your host, Rachael Van Pelt, and today I want to ask you one of the more important questions you're going to face in retirement. What will you do with the limited time you have left? Will you make the most of it, or will you fritter it away? We work our whole lives to earn a measure of freedom for our next act. But then one day we wake up and we find our days are slipping through our fingers. Initially, it can feel like we have all the time in the world and anything goes, but too often that freedom becomes a trap, one that quietly steals our purpose, our energy, and even our health. Have you ever found yourself looking up at the clock, shocked to realize it's already noon and your morning vanished in a haze of sipping coffee, endless news scrolling, puttering around the house? Maybe a short nap later and your afternoon is gone, isn't it? And with it goes your motivation to move, connect, and challenge your mind. That widely held belief that retirement equals endless leisure is often backfiring spectacularly for many of us. If we're not intentional about how we spend our hours, we end up with days filled by default activities, watching TV, browsing social media, or some other low-value chore that leaves our body and brain undernourished. And when that pattern repeats day in, day out, it creates a kind of monotony and atrophy. Our muscles weaken, our memory dulls, and our social circle shrinks. I call this the retirement time paradox. The more freedom we have, the more aimless we become, and the less time we actually experience as meaningful. To put that paradox in perspective, let's say you are 65 years old today and with a life expectancy of 85 years. You may think that you have 20 full years ahead of you, but let's subtract your time spent sleeping and in activities of daily living. At roughly 7 hours of sleep each night, 6.5 hours of screen time daily, plus time spent eating, grooming, shopping, and driving, you're dedicating more than 18 out of every 24 hours to routine activity. Over 20 years, that adds up to nearly 15 years locked into autopilot, leaving you with only about 5 years of true free time left. That's crazy if you really stop to think about it. Only 5 years left for pursuing your passions, explorations, and connections. It really puts your next act into perspective. If you want to live fully, you can't afford to fritter away this precious time. So today we're going to challenge the retirement time paradox. We'll tap into the science of why structure still matters in this season of life and explore a few conventional and unconventional strategies for taking back your life. By the end of the episode, you're going to see why time management is even more important once you've retired, not less. But first, let's look at the science. As we age, our circadian rhythms shift. Our natural sleep-wake cycles, they tend to drift or they fragment more easily. Without an external schedule like a job, school drop-offs, family commitments, we can easily fall into irregular sleep patterns, and that leaves us sluggish and unmotivated. If we try to make up for this with naps, these patterns simply become more disruptive, and it perpetuates a downward cycle. What's worse, high-quality sleep is absolutely critical for resetting our metabolism and clearing plaque from our brains every single night. When we don't get enough of that high quality deep sleep or REM sleep, our body and brain ages faster. So you can just imagine what that does to the quality of the few years that you have left. And then there's the dopamine story. Our brains love novelty and challenge. It's what drives our reward pathway. When we learn something new, we push our bodies or we engage socially, our brains light up with motivation and pleasure. But when we repeat the same passive routine day in, day out, it stops registering as rewarding. Interestingly, research in longevity science shows that when people mix up their daily activity, say switching between physical, mental, and social engagement, that slows cognitive decline and it improves overall health. And mixing it up within each of those categories is good for longevity too. For example, you might add variety to your exercise routine by alternating walking with strength training or the occasional dance lesson. That kind of variety will boost your mood as well as your muscle tone. You can also add variety to your social engagements. Maybe you join a bridge club, a book club, or just commit to weekly phone calls with old friends. That kind of extra social connection will greatly improve your health span. So if you ever wondered, why am I feeling worse now that I have all this free time? I'm free to do whatever I want. The answer is you might just have too much unstructured time and not enough challenge in your life. To fix that, you're going to want to find more of a balance between structured routine and variety. Now, consistency is your best friend when it comes to sleep. Going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, avoiding midday naps, all of those things will improve your circadian rhythms and the quality of your sleep, which in turn will improve your overall health and slow cognitive decline. It'll boost energy and motivation. On the other hand, when it comes to your day-to-day, you don't just want consistency, you want variety as well. So mix up what you do physically and socially to keep stretching your brain and body so they keep firing on all cylinders. But I know finding the balance is easier said than done, isn't it? There are all sorts of what I call time leaks. The first leak is the morning drift. You don't set an alarm, you sleep in, you roll out of bed, and by the time you pour your first cup of coffee, half your morning is gone, isn't it? Another leak is the putter zone, where you fill hours with low-value tasks such as doing laundry, checking email, doom scrolling the news, whatever. And then you spend an inordinate amount of time deciding what you're going to do next, whether you'll go to the gym today or go for a walk or maybe finally get to the yard work you've been putting off. And then there's the evening slump. Perhaps you start with an hour of TV, but it easily turns into 3, punctuated by late night snacking, maybe a little more doom scrolling or gaming on your phone. You finally collapse into bed totally exhausted, but you can't sleep because you're so edgy, feeling unfulfilled. When these kinds of patterns go unchecked, they give you a false sense of relaxation, but they're quietly at the same time corroding your vitality. But here's the good news. Structure doesn't have to feel like a return to the 9-to-5 grind. Structure can be a framework that empowers you to live with intention, to choose activities that nourish your body, your mind, your spirit. One conventional approach is time blocking. I know it's not sexy, but it's one of the most reliable strategies that we have. All it means is that you're assigning broad chunks of time to categories like morning movement, midday learning, afternoon social, evening wind down. And then you protect those blocks on your calendar as if they were your job. For example, you might decide to block 8 to 9:30 every morning for a 90-minute routine of walking and calisthenics and prayer or meditation. Then maybe you block from noon to 2 for learning or volunteer work. Add to that another 60-minute block in the evening where you turn off the TV a little early, put down the phone, take some time to journal, and you've created some shape to your day. You don't have to plan every minute either. You just need a few well-placed blocks. It anchors your day. It gives your day a little bit of shape. It boosts your momentum. You can also do what are called micro habits. That's where you break down desirable behaviors into smaller chunks that feel a bit more manageable, but they're still rewarding. For example, if your goal is to become more active and boost your overall fitness, rather than just expect suddenly you're going to go to the gym 4 days a week, what if you started with the micro habit of simply scheduling a few 15-minute dance parties in your kitchen? Or if the goal is to be more social, rather than commit to a 10-week Bible study, what if you started with a 15-minute call to a friend you haven't spoken with in months? These bite-sized bursts of engagement can accumulate into a remarkably rich, varied day. And to keep yourself honest, use a habit tracker. That can be an app or just a paper journal. Tick off each micro habit as you go. You get a lot of satisfaction from checking a box. And it also triggers your brain's reward system, and that reinforces the behavior. Now, I know that strict scheduling can feel counterintuitive for many of us who dreamed of unshackled days. That's why I want to introduce a few unconventional ideas, ways that you can blend freedom with focus so you don't feel imprisoned by your own calendar. One of my favorites is what I call productive spontaneity. You build into your week several unstructured slots, maybe 3 2-hour time blocks where anything goes. These become your windows of serendipity. You have time to just wander into a museum or try out a new recipe or join a last-minute meetup at the park. You get to honor the time commitment, but leave the content wide open. And that sense of exploration can be just as invigorating as a planned class or activity. And just make sure that you're not filling that time with those nefarious default time wasters. Another twist is to give yourself challenge weeks every few months. For 5 straight days, just flip your routine on its head. Do your regular activities at new times. For example, maybe you take your afternoon walk in the morning instead. Your morning reading block moves to the afternoon. That social lunch becomes an evening dinner. You get the idea. And to shake it up even more, you can add entirely new habits to those 5 days. On Monday, maybe it's a jigsaw puzzle. On Tuesday, go attend a local lecture. On Wednesday, volunteer at an animal shelter. Thursday, take a painting workshop. Friday, go dancing. These kinds of challenges are going to break up the monotony for you. It's going to fire up your brain's novelty circuits, and it'll build some momentum for creating more variety in your life. One of my clients, Anne, after she retired from teaching, she found herself drifting through many months that felt empty. She would inadvertently end up on the couch for long doom scrolling binges. She'd nap away some of her best afternoon hours. And she started to sense that her body was weakening and her mood was darkening. But of course, she didn't know where to start, what to do. So I helped her reclaim her mojo with what we affectionately called her morning power hour. But that hour actually starts the night before. Every evening, she sets out her journal and her walking clothes. She puts her headphones and her telephone on the charger. She chooses a podcast she wants to listen to. Then the first thing when she wakes up in the morning, without expending any mental bandwidth, she doesn't have to have any internal battle of the wills. She puts on her walking clothes, pops in her headphones, turns on the podcast. She also turns on her coffee machine, and then she heads out the door for a 20 to 30 minute brisk walk around the neighborhood. When she gets back, she pours herself a cup of coffee, sits down with her journal, and writes 3 things that she's grateful for, and then 1 intention for the day. She even started mixing it up and adding some strengthening exercises for 15 minutes every other morning. And that simple routine was enough to ignite her energy, sharpen her mind, and give her a sense of accomplishment before she even had breakfast. That energy and momentum was priceless. It got her back into a monthly book club, started volunteering a bit at a community garden. But what was even better, she stopped napping. She improved her sleep quality, and that added to her energy. It got her out of her mind fog. And she made a massive shift in her longevity mindset. She fully empowered herself to keep growing rather than shrinking. So what are you going to do to reclaim your time and energy? I challenge you to start with a 1-week time audit. Just for the next 7 days, jot down what you do each hour. Don't judge, just observe. At the end of the week, circle the hours that you felt truly engaged and energized. And then highlight the hours you felt sluggish or empty. This simple practice is going to reveal your biggest time leaks. And you'll also probably find some hidden energy pockets that you can tap into. Once you know where your time is really going, time block with maybe a consistent movement or mind challenge block in the morning, a social or creative engagement block in the afternoon, that sort of thing. Keep the rest of the day flexible, but protect those anchors like appointments that you would never miss. And finally, pick up one of those unconventional strategies we talked about. Maybe it's opening your calendar to some productive spontaneity slots or running one of those 5-day challenges of new activities. Notice how your energy, your mood, your sense of purpose, all of those things shift when you reclaim even just a small bit of structure. Retirement, it's not a finish line, is it? It's a launch pad. You've spent decades honing your skills, gathering experience, and building a life you love. Now, with time as your greatest asset, you have the opportunity to craft days that feed your curiosity, nourish your body, and deepen your social connections. Don't let the freedom of retirement slip away in an aimless drift. Instead, be deliberate. Choose the moments that matter to you. Design your days around growth. Savor every hour with the wisdom that comes from a life well lived. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Next Act Ninjas. If today's episode inspired you, please be sure to share with someone you care about and tell us about your morning power hour in the comments if you implement that. Let's keep inspiring each other to our best next act. Until next time, live well, love more, age less, my friends.